Hello folks, today in this Game Make series, I'm going to show you how to create an inventory system. Here runs the game, and when you press this backpack button, it will open up an empty inventory. Now you are wandering around the scene and collect some objects. Here shows the object disappear when you touch the object. And when you open up the inventory, you can move this object around and put into different slots. Now you are moving to collect another object, for example this red card. Let's approach it. Here you go, you see the object also disappears. And when you open the inventory, it will enter into your inventory slot automatically. Awesome. You will also see you can't overlap with another object, it just won't go into the slot. If you'd like to see how to code this, please stay tuned and enjoy the show. Here is my preliminary plan for the inventory system. Basically, on the top, it's the inventory items to be collected. Down below is the inventory manager, which contains a list of inventory prefabs. It's also the main contact controlling the physical movement and graphic display of inventory objects. On the left side, it's the inventory prefab containing the drag and drop script that controls the physical movement within the inventory slot. And with the drag and drop script will contain the scriptable object. This powerful SO will include all the major information of an individual object. For example, it has the item name, item description, the quantity, and the 2D sprite image representing the object icon and the item prefab as well. Later on, you are able to further expand the scope. For example, you can define whether this object is stackable, trashable, and consumable. We can define whether or not the object can be equipped as a weapon or defensive item. Great. On the right side, you will see the inventory UI here. This side is for the graphic representation of what's going on in the inventory display. The UI is the game object to control whether or not it can be shown on the screen. Down below is the inventory slots. It represents how the display in each slot is going to show on the screen. Alright, let's start with the scriptable object firstly. Now we are back from the last tutorial of Game Make 002. If you want to see how I had made it so far, please refer to my first two tutorials from scratch. Here in the Package Manager menu, we are going to import this new asset called Puzzle Item Pack. You will be able to find it in Unity Asset for free. Let's download and then import this to the scene. Now back to the scene. After the download, you will be able to see a new folder for this asset. Okay, the next thing to do is to build a scriptable item. To do this, let's create a folder first and name it as Inventory SO. Now in our Inventory SO, let's create a new C# script. Let's create Inventory SO. Open the Visual Studio. Now we are in Visual Studio. Get rid of mono behavior. Instead, I make it a scriptable object, and next on the top let's create an asset menu, and the file name we would say Inventory SO, and also the menu name to be whatever you like. Let's say scriptable objects. And then we would say Inventory SO. Let's get rid of these defaults and go back to the map. Let's build a set of variables here. For example, item name. Let's public string item name. Secondly, define public integer item quantity. And then public sprite item sprite. Okay. Then we say public game object, we say item prefab. Basically, we had these properties. Let's make one boolean called is this object stackable? Then whether it is keepable. Next, it is trashable. Whether or not this object can be removed. Lastly is consumable, whether or not it can be consumed to boost some health, for example. So now we have created the Inventory SO. Basically, it acts as a database where the object contains. Now back to the inventory interface. Here you see, we have the script, we have item prefab here. Let's build the Inventory SO. Let's create something here. As you see, there is now a scriptable object menu, and under that, we have Inventory SO. Let's click on it. Now to create a couple of items here. Okay. Let's see a battery first. This is first one we'd like to build. Let's name it battery. We have the AT name battery and quantity is 1. Actually, assessed to that object, we have 2 types of batteries graphics. Let's drag and drop this sprite. So we have AA battery. Then for the prefab, let's assign this prefab, but of course later on we need to modify this later. Now it's time to start the drag and drop script. Here we'd like to build the inventory prefabs. It's already finished the scriptable objects and its attributes. Next, we also like to build the UI interface. To do this, firstly, we pick up a game object and make as inventory UI. Choose the canvas as the UI folder. Under that we put another game object also, an empty UI game object, so let's say it's inventory UI. That's the one which is holding up all the inventory slots here. To make a slot under the UI folder, let's choose the image. It's an image here. Let's make it as the children of inventory UI. In that image, let's rename this as slot 1. For the width, we can adjust its size in here. Let's say 40 by 40. Let's make it bigger to be 60 by 60. We have the UI panel in 2D space. When you click the 2D icon here, you will see the UI interface. We could adjust its size like this, and adjust it whatever necessary to make it look good. Now we should be at the middle of it. Okay, we have a basic panel. Here is the GUI parts asset. Let's download and import this asset to your current scene. With this asset, we can assign some sprites to the slot or panel. Let's choose one of the sprite to decorate the panel like this example. Now let's add another panel. This one is slightly smaller. Try to adjust a little like that. We don't have to be very accurate, and it just looks good. After that, under the Add component, let's add the grid layout group. This is super useful for creating inventory slots. Okay, rename this as grid and put it under the UI here. Then it would be very easy under this script. We can populate some slots. Let's choose UI image. Just make it 80 by 80. Okay, something like that. Now I'd like to move it to the top left corner. We need to make the image to become the children of the grid in order to make the grid work. Now what we want to do is to rename this object to be slot 1. It's the slot 1, and what you want to do next is to give a little space here. Let's say 10 in X direction and 10 in Y direction. Next is use the Control D. Here you go. You see the slot populate with consistent spacing. Perfect. Now here is the magic when you try to adjust the size of the panel. The number of slots will adjust automatically like this. So depending on your panel size, it will always end up with equal spacing. Awesome. This makes the inventory slots much easy to create and handle. Once we fix the size, let's adjust the position of the panel to the center with the blue lines showing up. Now we have the whole bunch of inventory slots made nice and clean here. Next, we will be working on the cosmetic and background of these slots. Great. Let's make a prefab. Under this menu, choose prefab. Let's make a folder called prefabs and let's move this to this folder. And here rename this as slot. Then you just want to replace this to the prefab. And it's done. Then we can just delete all these and replace them with new prefabs with Control D command like this. As you can see, any of the slot has this prefab now. Let's apply the image to one prefab. As you see, all of the slots with the prefabs will now changing to the new icon. The first one I accidentally removed the prefab, so let's add back the prefab to it. Let's pull this prefab to the first slot, and then remove the parent of the slot by pressing the delete button. And here we go. All of the slots now looking nice and clean. Let's rename all the slot from slot 1 to slot 10. Now it should look a bit like the inventory panel. And of course I would like to make it a little bit larger. Let's add some text to the inventory menu. For this example, I'd to use legacy text and then make a little bit bigger. And let's type inventory. And adjust the appropriate size, position, and color. Now we should have a basic inventory display finished. Now I have laid out the slots properly. Let's highlight all these slots and relocate all of them outside the grid, as we don't need the grid function anymore, and we could disable the grid object by unchecking this little icon here. Put the text back to the children of the inventory UI and name it properly. It's done. Now we have created the inventory UI. We can control the display of this UI by activating or deactivating the GameObject command in the script, which I'm going to cover this very soon. Now back to the map, we have just finished the inventory UI in this map. And also the physical stuff for the lot. It's time to work on the drag and drop script and also the onDrop script. Before working on these scripts, let's build another folder called Resource. This folder is used to contain all of the sprite objects within the inventory panel. For example, this time let's build a battery prefab here. Now let's add the UI image to the root folder and rename this as battery. After that, make sure it has the rect transform. And then you just drag and drop here and replace this as prefab. Now it's the prefab we would like to get. Let's open Sprite menu and select some sprites. What we want to add is this icon. Right now, the size of this icon should be 80 by 80. Now let's drag this battery object to one of the slot, let's say the first slot, so that as you can see here, we have the battery. Now let's move this battery sprite from one slot to another. For example, if you move this from slot 1 to slot 2, you will see this rect transform center mark here. Now let's drag the battery from slot 1 to slot 3. Here you go, this rect transform mark is now moving to the center of slot 3. Let's set the local position X and local position Y to be 0. Here you see the battery is now moving from slot 1 to slot 3. I just demonstrate how it works by physical setting of these parameters. You can stimulate the inventory icon moving around in different slots within the inventory. Firstly, you need to change the parent of the battery. Secondly, to set the local vector position X and Y to be 0. In part 2 of this inventory tutorial, I'm going to show you how to do this in codes. Awesome. Just like here, I set position X and position Y to be 0 and the object now in slot 3. Perfect. Let's run the game and see what happens. As you can see, the inventory UI is showing up. But you see the issue here. We don't have any button to trigger the inventory on and off. So in the next part, I will be showing you how to do it in the current starter assets pack. So that's the end of part 1 on how to create inventory. In the next part, I'm going to show you how to move these icons within the inventory interface. I will also show you how to add an input button to the screen so that you can open and close the inventory. If you find it useful, please give it a like and subscribe. Thank you. Now we are back to the Unity interface. Let's make another script called drag and drop item. Let's open the Visual Studio for the script. Let's look for the drag drop script and remove the default. Firstly, private rect transform M rect transform, private canvas group and M canvas group. And next is the vector 3 start position and transform start parent. We'd also define inventory SO. I think it's all at the moment. Next, remember to add using UnityEngine.EventSystems. because this includes some built-in drag handler interface. Now add the iDrag handler beside the mono behavior so that we can access its interface. We also need iBeginDrag handler, and we also need iingDrag handler. We do have iPointerDown handler. Let's implement these interface one by one by clicking on this little red circle button here. Now let's remove this not implement exception and just add some debug.log to see what happens. Just add on drag and see if we can find this in the console. And here we have the begin drag. And similarly, just write debug.log endDrag. And finally, let's print onPointerDown. Let's test them out. Go backing to the UI interface. Let's add the drag and drop script right now. Drag and drop item and also the inventory SO to be included in the script. But at the moment we don't need this information yet, and we are going to need them later. Let's just save it to one of the prefab and thus all of them with this script. Let's run it and see what happens. Okay, so as you see, when you try to press down the mouse button, you will see onPointerDown in the console. And when you keep pressing the mouse key and drag it, you will see onDrag in the console. After releasing the button, you should see onEndDrag. As you can see, even we had done all these, the battery doesn't follow with my mouse cursor because we hadn't programmed this yet. At least we can see some responses from the mouse movement and mouse click. Awesome! Next thing to do is we want it to have some kind of action here. So, private void awake function, we need to have the mRecTransform equals getComponent. I would like to get its reference to the recTransform. So the generic is recTransform. Next is the mCanvasGroup equals getComponent. Then we want to get the generic as CanvasGroup. Okay, so let's take the reference of recTransform and CanvasGroup. At the moment, we haven't added the CanvasGroup yet. I'm going to do it later. Let's start working on the onBeginDrag method. Firstly, we would have the start position is equal to currentTransform.position. So start parent is the current parent we are in, because we're going to change parent very soon. Okay, so transform.setParent to be the transform.root. What it does is when your mouse is dragging the object, it will change its current to the parent where it is at the root directory of the game object tree. Next is during our drag with the object, we would like to update the object position, which we expect it follows with our mouse cursor. mRecTransform.anchoredPosition plus equal to the event data, then .delta, and everything should work. What essentially happen is this mRect.transform refers to the component. For the UI, where the anchored position is the position of the middle point of the slot. So by the amount of movement by the mouse is the amount of movement for the recTransform.position. There you will be able to move the inventory object around. Right now, when I press the I key for the inventory, it opens up the inventory panel. Look, when I click on the object, oh no, the slot is moving with the mouse instead of the battery only. Something is wrong. Oh yes, it looks I put the wrong drag and drop script to the slot instead of the inventory prefab. To correct this, let's remove the drag and drop component. We should put the drag and drop to the battery object. Now we have battery SO, so let's drag the scriptable object that we had built earlier and pull it to this slot. And we should be good to go. Now let's run the game again. And when I press the I key, here you go, you see the battery object is now moving with my mouse position. Awesome! But we quickly find an issue here. You see when I release the mouse key, the object is just set there at the location where your mouse is currently at rather than sit on the proper position of the inventory slot. Let's fix this right now. If transform.parent is equal to the start parent, that means you still at the starting slot, then transform.position equals start parent.position. If not, then it also goes back to the original position. Next is else if transform.parent equal to transform.root. Essentially, when we begin drag, you will see the parent already changed to transform.root. Finally, transform.setParent and we changed back to original parent. And transform.position equals start position. So it basically means if transform.root does not change, it would still return back to the original slot position. Since we haven't handled the onDrop function yet, so whatever you do, you will always return back to the original slot at the moment. So, we will be implementing the parent change for the onDrop script, which is to explain in the next tutorial. Now let's run the game and see the result. Now let's run the game and see the result. Let's press the I key to open the inventory panel. Let's drag and drop this battery item. Here you go, whatever you want to place the object into any slot. It will just return back to its original slot or start parent. That's exactly what we want because after the begin drag script, we did not change the parent. The parent is still either the start parent or the transform.root. Then the position will still be the start parent transform position. You can't change from one slot to another at the moment because we haven't written the code for the onDrop method where this method includes changing the current parent of the object to the new slot. This will be covered in the game Make 4 series of inventory building. If you want to see it, please give it a like and subscribe to my channel. Bye-bye.